Hello everyone! Today I wanted to talk to you guys about tertiary function preference. So I realized I have to do this video because I made a whole long video about Jordan Peterson without even mentioning this concept, but this video is not about him, it's about tertiary function preference in general. So first I should define what I mean by that, because it's not really my idea. Like, a lot of people talk about tertiary function preference or subtypes or jumpers or whatever, and I feel like everyone has a slightly different definition. But my definition, loosely, is basically when I type clients, when their tertiary function subconscious cues or subconscious cues related to that function is more than their subconscious cues for their auxiliary function, then I blanket just call it tertiary function preference. Most of the clients I type are older than me. I'm 26, by the way. And yeah, I'll say most of them in their 30s, but it's a wide age range. And I would say that most people seem to prefer their tertiary function, or use their tertiary function slightly more than their auxiliary. The easiest way that I can see this is through NI and SE eye movements. I see it in the other cues as well, but I think the most starkly different things is NI eye movements are very, very different looking from SE eye movements. So I can very precisely count, how often they're going into NI and how often they're in SE. So guess what? Most of the ISFPs and ISTPs, they're showing more NI eye movements than most of the ENFJs and ENTJs. However, I say most because it's not all. Some of the ISPs are showing, very little NI, and some ENJs are showing, very little SE. But yeah, most people do seem to be, using their tertiary more frequently. So there's a few different theories that could be arise from this. One is the most obvious one. I think we all believe that as we get older, we develop and strengthen our lower functions. So that's the most likely case, I think, is that as people grow older, their tertiary is just getting stronger. Sometimes to the point where, it looks more frequent than the auxiliary. And then the second case is, okay, maybe some people are really born preferring their auxiliary more, and some people are like born wired to prefer their tertiary more. And maybe evidence for this could be like some much older people, like 40 or 50, who are more auxiliary preference, like it would be like an ENTJ who has more NI than SE. And sometimes, like I typed a really young INFP, she's like 18, I believe, and she was already SI preference, like her SI was already stronger than NE, like not just through SI eye movements, but also through, how she answered the questions and such. She just overall exhibited more SI than NE. The other thing is that I'm not really sure that the SI preference ISFPs have better SI than NE. So the thing about observing the frequency of the cues is that the frequency of the cues only show when they're doing a subconscious cue. So I can probably say that the INFP is using SI more often than NE, but I can't really say if her SI is better than her NE. So that's like another theory, and it's really related to this other theory that I have of changing orientations or path of least resistance, not to be confused with the polar function. But yeah, we all want to do like what's easy, right? I think our bodies gravitate to doing what's like most easy and energy efficient. And an INFP, her default is going to be FI. So while she's FI, it will take more energy to like extrovert out into NE than it is to just default to SI, because they're both introverted. You don't have to flip orientations. And I think that for that case, the FI and SI are like partners. FI and SI, yeah, there's like a partnership there, but like NE doesn't really have a partner because the TE is so crappy, for lack of a better word. So I'm like in my introverted bubble doing my FI and SI things, and they are so connected that sometimes I have trouble figuring out whether I'm doing SI or FI, or if it's an amalgamation of. So they're like joined at the hip. But then like I have to make a conscious effort to break into NE, and I have to make even more effort to break into TE, so I don't think there's even a relationship between my TE and NE. So I think, yeah, that might be something that's happening to a lot of people. And another theory is called looping, I think, tertiary or dominant and tertiary looping, and it's supposedly an unhealthy behavior. So I see why, they would say that, because obviously you should be using like a little bit of NE if you're an INFP, but I don't know, like there's probably a fine line between where it's unhealthy and where it's just natural, because, in my experience, the looping clients, they don't really seem to be unhealthy compared to the non-looping clients, and I think most people are looping, but that is also because most of my clients are on the older side. So now I guess I'll give an example of how I feel like my SI is getting stronger and stronger, or I'm using it more and more often as I age. So like when I was little, if I had nothing to do, if I was bored in the afternoon, I would always gravitate towards doing something new. If someone asked me to do something that I've never done before, I usually go for it because I'm curious. So I think that was more in E. But nowadays, I'm so not that. Oh my gosh, people ask me to do something new and I just don't feel like it. Like I feel like doing the same thing over and over again. Like I have a couple of things that I like to do and I just want to keep doing those things because it's very comforting to just know what to expect. I also really loved experimental films when I was little. Like even just a few years ago, even, when I was 21, I loved experimental films because I never know how the plot's gonna go. I never know what the filmmaker is trying to convey, and I have to piece it all together because you don't even know what happened after watching the movie. But now, oh my gosh, I love to just watch rom-coms or whatever. Like I know exactly how it's gonna end. I know where the conflict points are and how the conflict points are gonna be solved. It just follows this nice comforting formula, and I know exactly which emotions are gonna trigger, so my FI and FI are just happily enjoying the ride. So, but when I do break into an E, I have to come up with 10 video ideas for YouTube, I feel like I can do that fairly well. So I think maybe my NE is still stronger than my SI, but who knows? Maybe if I keep defaulting to my SI when I'm in my 30s or in my 60s, whenever, maybe my SI will become stronger than the NE. So yeah, I can't tell based on the kind of cues themselves whether, just because you're using it more frequently, if yours is better or not, but it's something to think about. Anyway, I feel like this should make it easier for people to type themselves because I typed a girl as ISTP and she didn't really relate to the type, and she said that she's actually stuck between INTP and INFJ, and I thought wow, so I told her she has an I preference, which of course I only tell people that if they actually do have an I preference, because not everyone does. And she was kind of resistant, and I get it because it just sounds like some BS thing that I made up, but it's true. Some people don't have an I preference based on their eye movements, and some people do. So I was trying to explain that, it actually makes so much sense because obviously she really relates to very strong TI. That's why she types herself as INTP. But she also relates to such strong NI that she types herself as a NI dominance, like an INFJ. And yeah, ISTP in that case is the midpoint between INTP and INFJ. So I hope this makes it easier for you to type yourself. I realize that it also makes it kind of complicated as well because it makes those 16 personality, those online questionnaires, a little bit more difficult because, if you're like a ESTJ but you have an NE preference over SI, whether you're NE stronger or not, you gravitate towards an E, then you'll type yourself as ENTJ perhaps, and then get confused why you don't relate to an ISE, but you relate to being intuitive. Okay, so if you still have trouble with typing, I do offer a typing service on my website, kindof8.com. So do let me know in the comments what you think, which theory you think is correct, if you think looping is healthy or unhealthy, or where's the fine line for that. If you feel like you're developing your tertiary function a lot when you're growing up or not at all, and yeah, just let me know. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.